Forged with a passion for steel and an iron-like eye for talent. This is the Recruiter of Steel podcast. Blast right in 3, 2, 1.
But Scott has over 20 years of experience increasing revenue at MetalWest.
I don't care if there's an economic depression. We choose not to participate. We're not going to, our mindset is not going to go to a place, and we're not going to be believing this press.
Welcome to the Recruiter of Steel podcast. Very excited for today's episode and happy to be joined by Scott Began, who is heading up the Scott Began Group. But Scott has over 20 years of experience in the industry. Started out by increasing revenue at MetalWest, a family-owned service center business, to over $500 million in revenue. Then moved on to double revenue at Will Banks Metals, and then moved on his career into the more technology space of the industry, right? At startups like Rebus and Felix, and now heads himself as a consultant for the industry and ultimately a great mentor and advisor who I like to call a mentor and friend. So thank you, Scott, for coming on here. Appreciate it.
Tyler, thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you inviting me here today. I was taken back by when I saw you and introduced you through LinkedIn and some other social media outlets. And I was taken back by the next generation, bright smiled and big personality guy that's narrowing his focus in the metal service center industry, the same industry that I have a love and passion for. So thank you for inviting me onto your podcast here today.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you're most welcome. So, Scott, for all our listeners, you have a very, very impressive resume, probably one of the most impressive that I've seen. So, and that's saying something being a recruiter in the space, right? So I want to walk through your background, right? Because it's very diverse and it's obviously very accomplished, but take us through your story, right? You've been in this industry for a while. Like myself, I'm more coming into it on the outside as a recruiter, learning so much from folks like you, but take us through that first part of your career, and then we'll get to where you are now.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And what we're doing today is really exciting and a lot of fun. But let me just share with you just a little bit of background so your audience can frame out sort of where this guy's coming from. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, the oldest of three boys and a kid sister. And people often ask me, how long have you been involved in the steel industry? And if you count every breakfast conversation in our family, it's been a lifetime. My father, Bob Began, owned a small little service center called Robert Steel in Cleveland, Ohio. And when we were kids and growing on up, we would spend our summers smelling the oil off of steel and building skids and that sort of thing. So that was the early beginnings of our growth in the industry. In fact, it was probably where I got my sales leadership skills. When I was 15, I remember coming in for the summer, and my father, and this, Tyler, this is probably, you don't even remember in your generation, but they had a thing called Yellow Pages. And he plopped me down at a desk, and they had a telephone that was hooked to the wall. And he said, start making calls to all the manufacturers in and around the Cleveland area. I said, I don't know anything about steel. And he said, I said, what do I do? He goes, well, just ask them if they need any steel. And I said,
doesn't hurt to ask.
What happens when they say yeah? He goes, well, then you hand the phone over to me and I'll take it from there. So that's how we spent our summers and growing up both there and in operations. And I remember coming anyone who's grown up in and around the Midwest, we had trucks roll in and all that sludge, coal and salt would just drip off of the semis, and you'd be there. We'd have to clean it off the floors in preparation for the next week for the next week. So
yeah,
we've been around it for a lifetime. Yeah, and when we grew up to college, my dad ended up selling his service center to his employees, and then he took his fortune to go to the wild, wild west to build homes to chase a childhood dream. And all of us boys, as soon as we could be of age and go to college, we got as far away from the steel industry as we possibly could. And it wasn't until later, till my dad had an opportunity up in Denver about it. All us boys were in our mid 30s, and Dad was recruiting us to help him grow at that time a failed 90-year-old business called, I think it was Foss Metals at the time,
Mm.
that they were just a little bit away from bankruptcy. My dad was offered a small equity ownership position. He changed the name of the MetalWest and took it out of that bankruptcy from that family and grew it to about 18 million. 3 years later, he recruited all of us boys, and I was in the real estate development business down in Florida, and we came up to Denver and took a leadership role with MetalWest.
Nice.
So those were sort of the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so your father definitely got you into the industry there, and that's what I've seen a lot, and what I've learned a lot in this industry is there's not a lot of first generation folks, right? There's many that have been passed down, and it's almost like once you're in, you can't get out. So it looks like that kind of happened to you, but that's fascinating. So really, really cool stuff. He brought you up. He brought you into a leadership role at what was now at the time Metal West. And then over the years, you've spent quite a few years there, and then really helped it grow. So what was that? What were the early days like at Metal West? What was getting your feet wet in the industry like from an experience, like an outsider coming in? And then I guess what did you learn to then really grow the business forward?
Yeah, those are great questions. When I joined, there was probably 40 to 50 people involved in the organization. My father was one of those bigger John Wayne sort of life personalities, probably a little bit too much drinking and three pack a day sort of cigarettes. And he painted a vision. And honestly, God, if he went up to the top of the warehouse and said, "We're going to jump off the warehouse," probably half the people would.
Wow.
And what I meant by that is not that how crazy that sounds, but if you paint a vision, what I found out early is that if a strong leader can paint a vision for the future, there's so many people that would love to be part of something much bigger than themselves,
Sure.
especially when you're trying to do something excellent. We took it from that early. I was teased by some of the guys that here comes Scott. He's a natural born leader. His dad owns the company. But dad was tougher on any of us boys than he was on the normal person because we did have the same last name. We had
Mm,
a territory, so I was responsible for customer front-facing activities. I had Colorado Springs in those early days,
okay.
and we were building the company. We built it for over 18 years at 20% per year for 18 straight years. And then in that we ended up selling to a great family, the O'Neill Steel family.
Mm,
We kept on, us boys kept on as my dad stepped aside from that business. I think some of the I think some of the hallmarks are is that vision, painting a vision of not growth for growth's sake, but doing something of excellence. And
yeah.
Dad was always the customer first. It was customer. What we didn't get lost in strategy. We didn't get lost in trucks and operations and things like that. It was we were trying to focus what was the customer's demands. And in the steel industry, it's probably just fairly simple. It's on-time delivery, a fair price, and defect-free material. And you've got to perfect that day in and day out and day in and day out. One tell you a small story. We asked our father when we were growing the business, yeah, man, the kind of customers that are asking us to do these surveys, and what is our on-time delivery? Oh, he goes, that's one of our hallmarks. We are really, really strong. Well, the real truth of the matter is we didn't start until you start measuring something, no one is managing it.
Mm,
And we found
very
out that
true.
as soon as we started managing on-time delivery, we were delivering only at 65%. And it wasn't until you started focusing on that and all the other elements that were important did we start. When I left the organization, we were at on-time delivery at 98.5%
Mm.
all the time, every time at 15 different locations. So we grew from that one location to over 15 locations over that time and period that we were with the family's business.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And
Yeah.
that's extremely consistent. So I just want to harp on what you've said at first. It was 18 years of straight 20% growth year over year.
Fastest growing service center in the nation during that season. We were flat roll centric. We were doing cold roll and all the coated products, galvalume, galvanized, and then we introduced non-ferrous. It was all prime. It was all surface critical. It was always for those industries that had those sort of demands for it. I ended up building after several years working for the Denver location. My dad asked me, "Hey, go down to Texas and see if anybody in Texas would buy any steel from anybody in Colorado." And I was so naive. I didn't know that was impossible to do. But I went down to Dallas and I started having a little bit of success, knocking on doors and people saying, "Yeah, we would like to consider what that looks like." And one thing led to another, and we greenfielded our second operation in Garland, Texas, with a big warehouse, and then started laying in some material and bringing some of our talented operational people from Denver down to help me establish Dallas. And I got some seasoned salespeople, and you would appreciate this. My dad, I said, the sales are growing beyond what I can do right now. He goes, "Well, get some salesmen." And I'm not talking about a college Yahoo kid that wants, $40,000 in a company car. I want to get some seasoned guys, so guys with a little bit of gray in the time. I mean, the older guys that have established territories, that know where everything is in Dallas, and
You
get
should have
them.
called me, Scott. I could have helped you.
This is the
I
important
was in
thing.
diapers at the time, but I probably could have helped you.
And these guys were 48 years old, and I go, "Man, they're really old, Dad." So and now I'm 15 years ago. Anyway, but that was here's a story, Tyler, and I think this is where it resonates with you. Talent, talent is the key to growing these organizations, and that's what you're all about. That's what you're searching, and that's where you're making your home. And that's why I love the way that you are using technology to get your voice and as evidenced by this podcast. Nobody did this sort of thing in the day to get there. And you're also, through the hard work that you're doing, you're developing an understanding where these people are in the industry. And good people are good people are good people, and good leaders are good leaders are good leaders. And you have to surround yourself. I think one of the hallmarks of us, if you got down to it, and they said, "How did you grow MetalWest so fast?" It's because we surrounded ourselves with people that were faster, quicker, and smarter than we were.
Mm.
And that is a testimony, and engaging guys like you to go find that talent and identify those talents. And people have a vision and are not afraid of some hard work, and just getting out there and getting after it. So, that's why people that are doing what you're doing is so important.
Yeah. Thank you. And I appreciate the praise for that. It absolutely makes a difference. And hearing that coming from you when you've had the experience of growing an organization, again, that's everyone's dream, right? 20% year over year through economic cycles, through various different, industry factors, ups and downs. Everyone could have a good year here and there. Look at COVID, right? But can you do it consistently? Can you show up year over year? And you did for almost 2 decades. And that's very impressive. And then we went on to sell to O'Neill. I believe the number was around half a billion, right? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
we were doing about 30,000 tons a month of material, and taking it from bankruptcy to about 30,000 tons a month consistently was pretty significant. I mean, there's some big guys that's nothing to, but for a tightly held private family business, that was very significant and very, very narrow focus. We weren't all steel to everybody. We were very narrow focus in the flat roll segment of that.
Got it. And that's a fair amount of service centers out there too right now.
Yeah.
Very interesting, right? Before we move on and to kind of your next venture and how you got to where you are now, just to close out that chapter, right? So you were overseeing the growth of this. You were in an executive level position. You credit the growth to hiring great talent, right? People that were smarter than you, maybe had a little bit more know-how in certain areas, helped you get to where you are consistently. How did you know when it was time to continue to add people, right? This is kind of a unique question because many people are just afraid to take that next step. They want to grow, but they don't feel like they might not have their capital enough. They don't want to take the risk on hiring somebody else. How do you know when it's time to take that risk? And I guess how do you vet for those right people when you did it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very insightful question. And here's the deal. Here's what I've seen, Tyler, is that when the business has its ups and its downs, the markets are coming in and going, and we went through several economic downturns. And one of the hallmarks, I would say, of our growth was winning the war in our minds. What do I
Mm,
mean by that? If we were going into a recession or a very difficult time, or there was a retrenchment, or sort of the market's just sort of skidding sideways, it's not growing, it's not, and there's so much uncertainty in there. What I mean, what we won the war in our minds. I remember my father standing up in a leadership meeting and saying, uh, sales, where are sales at? And guys would say, well, they're holding back presidential election. There are all these reasons. And he goes, I don't care if there's an economic depression. We choose not to participate. We're
mm,
not going to, our mindset is not going to go to a place and we're not going to be believing this press. That means there's somebody out there in America who's still buying steel. It is your responsibility and your obligation to go find those guys. And there's always people that are excelling and doing well, even in
sure.
economic downtimes. And it was those times when it would be time to retrench, and there were people who would think, oh, we can't afford the next salesman. No, that was a time you cannot afford not to have the best salesman. In fact, those were the times that when times are going sideways or going down, that you could recruit the best.
Yes.
Because these other salesmen that are high performers, the guys that are really want to do something significant, make an impact, have some influence in their life, are drawn for other winners. That's a time we would engage a guy like you to find those other talented people. People often want to cut the first thing, sales expenses, and marketing and those sort of things in an economic downturn. That is a time to invest into the next generation of CAP. That's a time to invest into the next marketing initiative and to double down on it, not pull back. That
Really
was
great
some of the
stuff.
things that we found.
Yeah, app. That's super insightful. Thank you for sharing that, Scott. Um, Moving forward, you sold to O'Neill, had a successful almost 2 decade run with them. Um, we then went to Will Banks, entered in as a president, COO. What was that transition like, moving from a more family oriented company to something a little bit more on the outside? And what lessons did you take from MetalWest to then Will Banks to help them ultimately grow as well?
Yeah, Will Banks is a great company. It was regional, had four different locations, headquartered in Fort Worth, Texas, and tightly held private family business as well. And it seems like that's where I find myself. And was at that time, it was going through a leadership change from the father to its two sons, Ryan and Eric Letts, and we were going through some transition. And these guys wanted to some of the magic fairy dust that came off of our family history out Metal West to come off on them. And we had a tremendous run with the Letts brothers during that season of time as well. One of the things that we held dearly is that I think we were all convinced that when things are going well, you can't really make an impact. When things are going well with your customers and everything, but it was those customer service things when things went bump in the night where a load didn't get there on time, where there was somebody ran a forklift and bent the edges, or the pricing was going one way and you were pricing a different way. When things go bump in the night was a chance to differentiate yourself. And that was one of the hallmarks of Will Banks. If you had a problem as a customer, you did not have a problem. The guys were absolutely relentless at turning around, getting that red flag material off of their floor and replaced instantly, and working out the details in the back so you could keep production moving. You could keep the operational team happy by not stumbling over your defective material or something that wasn't making their part, and you made it right for the customer. Um, but it was, yeah, we had a nice run at Will Banks. We were able to double the size of their organization in a 3-year period as well. And again, I think one of the hallmarks of that is just surrounding yourself with really talented people. Some people that I knew at Metal West, I was able to draw into the Will Banks organization, and other people that that are already existing in the organization recruiting, training, and developing. Tyler, one of the people asked us, challenged me one time and said, "Man, you guys invest heavily in building up the next generation of managers and leaders and that sort of thing.
Mm.
You're taking them to conferences, you're investing in their skill set and these things. Man, what happens if you pour all this money into them and they end up leaving you as an organization because," and I said, "What happens if you don't train them and they stay?"
There you go.
That's, you want people. I want people. And today, one of the proudest things that I have is a lot of the guys in our industry came out of, I can proudly bumping into them. They came from our organization, and they're all over and excelling in mighty leadership roles throughout the entire industry. One of the greatest things that'll bring a smile to your face as you're watching people grow in their professional lifetime.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I could even speak to that from my experience, which is limited compared to yours, but just placing somebody in a role and seeing them grow or get promoted or have a massive impact on an organization, right? It's extremely gratifying. And
Yeah.
I think a recurring theme, at least what I'm hearing here, Scott, is your ability to recruit, retain, and develop talent, possibly talent that was even more talented than you in some aspects, has attributed to the growth. And that was one of, if not the major catalyst to both successes. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and Tyler, I would always have taken, and one of the things that we do, I don't care if you have all the horses in the stall that you need and all the people that in all the positions that you require. I never turn down an opportunity to meet the next person.
Sure.
If you as a professional recruiter came to me and said, "Hey, listen, I have a guy that bop 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 that would like to talk and think, and maybe you could contemplate using." Never, ever did I ever not take that opportunity to get a chance to meet somebody and take the time out. We were never too busy not to meet the next generation of cat.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because we may not have needed them at that time, but it laid the groundwork for saying, "Wait a second, if we opened up the next division, if we did this, if we had this next product offering, is there a place?" Because it's people first. It's about the people. It has nothing to do with the buildings and the inventory and all the processing equipment. It has to do with the people.
Mm.
And so I would always take the opportunity and got a person's recommendation like yours to sit down and visit and learn about and the worst comes to worst. I mean, you spend an hour getting to meet somebody, which always helps build your Rolodex, and you treat them with honor and respect and dignity, and no matter what the circumstances are. And you always learn something about the marketplace or where they
Yes.
came from or a strategy or something that wasn't working. And that was learning what was not working in the industry was as important as what is working. Does that
Yes.
make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I take the same approach, even from a recruitment perspective, right? If you're listening to this and you're a hiring manager, or even if you're a recruiter out there, I always try to take a conversation with a candidate, even if I don't have, even I could take a look at the resume and say, I don't have a role for you. It's better to take that conversation than not, because A, you never know what happens tomorrow. But B, there's so much you could learn just from talking to somebody, right?
Absolutely.
You could learn, okay, oh, you're on the market because this company has a terrible culture, and that's someone you want to stay clear of. And maybe there's other folks that are looking from there. Or maybe you're on the market because XYZ other factor. You never know, but you'll gain so much industry insight, people insight, and it really never hurts to, what I call ABR, always be recruiting, right? That's what it is. So good stuff, Scott. Looking at your career trajectory afterwards, right? We go more into a technology focused area, right? You had executive level role at MetalWest, grew that, sold that for $500 million. You then took Wilbank's, doubled revenue in a 3-year period. Now I've noticed some things where you're going into more of an entrepreneurial aspect with Real Vegan. You also then jumped to Felix and Rebus, which were two major startups in the technology space of steel. So tell me where your head was at that point, and where were you seeing the industry going from a technology standpoint?
Yeah. Before I do that, there's one correction. We didn't sell our business for $500 million to the O'Neill family, but we were doing a lot of revenue, but not the sales price.
Gotcha. Okay. Not, yes, that's fine. Good correction.
Real Yeah, it's my faith is important to me, and I jumped out of the steel industry for a season and ended up heading up a couple of things. I was CEO of Habitat for Humanity here in Dallas for a couple of years and led another ministry in a development role. So the things totally unrelated to. Sometimes it just goes back to my personal philosophy. Nonprofits should not be run by guys that can't get jobs in the real world. I think our nonprofits and some of the causes that they're mounting and they require some of our best and our brightest people. So there was a season that I was able to leverage some of the skills from from our past successes into a nonprofit that was doing something very impactful and meaningful for the community. But after the absence, I decided to get back into my field of favor, the steel industry, about 5, 6 years ago, and I was talking to my wife, and she goes, "Man, you miss it, don't you?" And I miss the relationships. I miss the people. It's rock solid industry. As big as an industry as it is, it's a fairly small industry.
Yes.
It's a fragmented industry. I think the top 10 service centers combined are only control about 18% of the spend in the United States today.
Mm.
I venture to say that there'll probably be more consolidation in the next 3 years than there'll be in the last 30 years combined
Wow.
as these bigger companies tend to roll on up. So, um, and they start leveraging their skill set. But to answer your question, I went back in the industry hoping to gain a leadership role in a service center to be helping strategize and to grow another service center. And people said 5 or 6 senior leaders that I have tremendous respect for in our industry that everyone would recognize their name even here today said, Scott, with your love of technology innovation and all things digital, and your deep insight and knowledge as an insider to the steel industry, there's 2 companies that are doing something that are quite unique that you need to explore. We don't understand what they're doing, but maybe you would.
Mm.
And that was Felix out of Cleveland and Rebus out of Atlanta. We're building these new online marketplaces. And I think you probably heard a little bit of that story from some others that you've had on your podcast.
Sure.
But absolutely innovative thought process, venture capital undergirded, and they bet the best of the brightest from Silicon Valley with the stiff old white guys with a little bit of gray in their hair in the steel industry, and you combine those 2 worlds to build a platform, the Amazon Prime of the steel industry, for lack of a better word. So service centers, mills, and all suppliers could put their inventories up in the cloud. Everyone would have access to it. 2,000 eyes would be on your material instantly. Push another button, put a truck underneath it, have it delivered to your back door. Push another button, have the entire transaction funded or financed. And the promise of it just seems so outrageously wonderful. And it was, these startups with as much promise as getting rich and being changing the way that we do business, much like Lyft or Uber or those sort of organizations, or they have as much chance of going bust, which is unfortunately some of
Yes.
the things that came out of those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. Both fantastic organizations. Rebus has been a great client of mine, and shout out to Chris Ship, JB, and everybody that was a part of that organization. Great individuals too.
Yeah, both
Yeah, no,
organizations yeah.
absolutely. And so yeah, that's very interesting. So what did you learn from your time at both of those organizations, seeing the way technology was coming in, and then where we are now going into 2026? Where does technology have a place in the industry, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think as on whole, I would be fair to say, Tyler, that our industry is technology laggard versus other industries. And they're not utilizing technology to its fullest to increase. Most importantly, the reason you do it is to increase your profitability, your effectiveness, and efficiency. And if with the customer first in mind, you're serving the needs of your customer, and customers are demanding better ways of doing business, quicker, faster ways of doing business. And if you're not paying attention to that, you're asleep at the wheel.
Mm.
Love the online marketplaces. And here's the deal, it might have been a little bit before their time. A major service center I was responsible for telling the story of why the online marketplace to the guys that were owning and operating these service centers. And I think just real quickly, if you just allow me just a minute to lessons learned in the online marketplaces.
Sure.
A senior leader would pull me aside. We were making a presentation in the boardroom, and he'd walk me to the side and say, "Scott, what's the purpose of this? Oh, I don't understand. What's the purpose of an online marketplace?" And I said, "To increase efficiencies." And I think and he pulled me aside and said, "Let me tell you a story. We're the guys that are investing millions and millions of dollars in plants, production, people, processes, inventories. We've got all this money at the risk, and we sort of live in the arbitrage. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, no one really knows how much stainless steel is in Dayton, Ohio this afternoon. No one really knows how much tube is in Houston and what a fair price of it is. He goes, what's the purpose of an online marketplace? I said, to give transparency and visibility to create efficiencies in the marketplace. Well, if you do that, you're doing it at our expense. And that was sort of what I was running into.
Mm.
If you are able to take 1% or 2% off the cost of material, if you understand the service center business, that could be, 20 to 50% of your profitability, net profitability of running it.
True.
And it was sort of the resistance that we met. Having said that, Tyler, there will be a winner in the online marketplace. There will be a time when it is all that we will go beyond the way that business is done today, and there will be an online place to find and steal. I hope it starts here in America, and but there is bright and talented people all over the world that are capable and have the resources and talent to pull this on off.
Mm.
We just need to know when and how to do that. But those are some of the challenges that I saw in that online marketplace.
Sure. Maybe you could correct me on this, but the way I see it is a lot like almost the auto industry, right? The way we buy and sell cars really hasn't changed much. It's not like we could just go on a website and order this Nissan Altima off of, Amazon or something, right? You still got to go through the dealership process. There's still, selective inventories depending on where you go, and pricing can vary, right? And I think that arbitrage or that allure is how that industry has stayed that way. And it's hard to break an industry where there's customs, right? And there's folks that have been in it for a while. And it's the same thing with steel, right? If you've been doing it one way for decades and decades, and you see something coming in as a disruptor or a threat to the way you do business, it might be tough for some people to adapt to it. But ultimately, the marketplace will find a winner and that will rise. But the timeline is who knows, right? Because some industries are quicker to adopt than others.
That's right.
But that's the way I would see it. So one question I have for you now, Scott, because you're doing some consulting work. You have the Scott Began Group. I know from our conversations, you would entertain the idea of going into the right service center and being that, leader that you were in the previous careers, right? But now it's a little bit different with technology, right? You've seen the impact that it could have. You've seen these online marketplaces take shape. And that was not the case when you were doing it, X amount of years ago. So my question would be, how would you leverage technology as a service center leader today? And what advice would you give to other service center leaders that might be listening to this that may be weary or slow to adapt technology? Any tips or information regarding that?
Yeah, it's since leaving the online marketplaces, I did open up my own shop called Scott Began Group, making the top senior leaders of the metal service center my target audience.
Yeah.
And the value proposition, Tyler, has been how to leverage, allow me to share with you some of my learnings of how to leverage technology to exponentially grow your enterprise. You don't do technology for technology's sake, but you do it to enhance the quality of life for your, number one, your customer and your staff and your team members. And I'm finding guys that are reluctant to adopt any sort of technology. I'm telling you what, and there is a generation of people that are reluctant to do, they see it as a cost center and not as a revenue opportunity,
Sure.
and as a way to differentiate themselves. And that is short-term thinking. there is one of the challenges in our industry is that we're having a hard time recruiting the next generation of young talent. We keep recirculating our people from one side of and there's this huge gap between
Yeah.
let's say the 50, 60-year-olds and the people that are coming out of college. There's this huge, big gap in the industry today of talented people in that 30s to 40s. And we have a hard time, in particular in operations. Here's the challenge is that our reluctance to utilize technology and make the job sort of sexy or make it easier, more efficient. There's other industries that are doing things that are making their jobs easier, more challenging, and better for its staff. And I think we're losing technology, we're losing a generation of cats because we're not pressing the envelope on that.
Yeah.
Let me share with you just some things that I'm seeing on the horizon. Just sort of, there's so much, so fast. It's unbelievable. I've partnered with Raj Jain of EX, and has he told you the story about the dog and the man?
Yes, if you've listened to the last episode, which will be on here before this,
Yeah,
yes, you will hear that one for sure.
well, real. He tells the story, and I will. Yeah, if you listen to it, he tells it a lot better than I do. But he goes, the service center industry will be a dog and a man. And people often ask, "What do you mean a dog and a man?" And he goes, "Well, the dog will be there to guard the business. The man will be to feed the dog," and that might be an overstatement. But here's the issue. We're seeing some things that are partnered with Ross. She's got a huge, magnificent team of technologists in behind him. And I mean, a masterful team of guys. And we're coming up with solutions and exploring those solutions with senior leaders today that are more face forward and tech forward than other people. And what we're seeing, just as an example, we're seeing lights out staging of materials from a production standpoint. We're seeing there's a market research in the industrial space that says speed to quote can increase your win rate by over 400%. And I remember in the old days at MetalWest, for example, inside sales guy, and this is how old it was. The guys were able to smoke inside their office and take a phone call at the same time, and they turn around and off a fax machine. I don't know who uses fax machines, but emails are starting to come into the service center business, and they'd be 5 deep in quotations. Now we have AI that's able to receive this in any format, from handwritten to email to fax machine, any which way, and quickly identify what the inventory is, availability, and within seconds be able to quote that. Not that you would take the inside salesperson away from it, but he can turn off of a phone call solving someone else's problem and say, yes, send that, send that, send that. I'm going to need to check inventory on that one, send that, send that. If you could increase your win rate, and by the way, when you're awarded that business, now it goes automatically up and into your ERP system. Without a big lift, without brain death, it is something that layers onto your existing system and is able to read into it. It's enhancing the win rate and literally making your salespeople's life a lot better. Not to displace them, not to cut anybody loose, but to give that time back to redirect them to open up additional markets and solve problems that are a lot more complex that require, instead of the mundane quoting, able to solve more complex problems. These are just some of the things that we're seeing, plus many, many more. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're seeing and how we could enhance our ability to do business.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the technology to be able to do that. It's game changing for anyone that actually wants to do it, because time kills all deals, right? And I think those statistics speak for itself, right? If speed to quote, if you were just able to increase that just a little bit, if you're able to beat your competition to the punch, you could increase, that win rate by 400%. Think of what that does to your bottom line. It's massive. So, yeah, I think aspects like that, I'm sure what you would look into as a leader and as a service center, operator from there. Scott, this has been an awesome conversation. I know we're approaching time here. So first of all, I want to thank you for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom and thoughts on technology and the power of talent to grow an organization is a real big takeaway from this. I I want to give you the floor now and give you some final thoughts. So for our audience, which consists of folks in the industry, mainly salespeople, some leaders, some executives, anyone in the hiring space too, but just steel in general, what final thoughts do you have and what takeaways do you want to give our audience?
Thank you very much. And Tyler, I appreciate you, and I really appreciate the job that you're doing out there. I know that you're in the not the infancy, but you were starting your career out, and I hold you in high regard, and you have, you're personable. People like and trust you, and I just hold you in high regard. And I know that you're going to knock it out of the ballpark as you're networking and developing your inroads with your senior leaders and the guys that are making making recruiting decisions from one side of the country to the other.
Thank you.
I would just, just some final thoughts on an industry that I absolutely love, and I would probably give just three pillars of why, how to grow some of these organizations and what I count as the highest characteristics and attributes of that strategy. One, I would say people first. You have to focus on surrounding yourself with people that you like and trust and that are talented and have the ability to grow. Not only grow today and be responsible and tell the truth and have the characteristics, but also to take on organizations. I think the speed of innovation that's going to be coming in both the processing equipment, the sales process, communicating with our customers is going to take is one of the most rewarding businesses in the world. And it's just absolutely fascinating. And it's going to take a person that has a skill set and a willing heart to learn, be humble, and to be able to learn. And those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. Two, I would say listening skills is one of the hallmarks of helping us grow our business. What do I mean by that? I mean the ability, as a young salesman, I thought the world sort of operated as arrogant as I was. It sort of rotated around me and how wonderful I was. That's not the case. And not that I'm not wonderful, but it's that I needed to ask questions I needed to hear the pain that our customers were experiencing. I needed to hear what was causing the pain with the incumbent, their existing supplier, and to be able to differentiate and make solutions. If you're not listening, you cannot understand. So seek first, understand, and then you'll be able to be understood. And the last thing that it's what I call, for lack of a better word, a growth mindset. You've got, independent of the world economy or U.S. economy, we know the realities of that, and we know inflation, we know all the issues, but this nation I would rather be in this nation selling to our manufacturing base than any time anywhere in the world's history. This is one of the most exciting times to be alive in our industry. It's the most exciting times to grow, and you need to win the war in your mind. If there is a trouble, we're going to work ourselves around it, and we are going to look for opportunities to expand and grow in our industry. And it's those people that we want to draw towards us. And that's why I love leaning on guys like you that are at the heartbeat of what's out there on the street and where people are right now, and people that maybe have expressed a discontentment and are looking for a change or just the next great opportunity to be part of something significant. So those are the three things that I think I would leave you with.
Yeah, those are very good points. So Scott, I'm happy to leave it on an optimistic note too, that we're at one of the most interesting and optimistic times in our industry. I think many people could appreciate that, and many might breathe a sigh of relief as well. So very good. Scott, where can folks connect with you, get in touch if they, want to work with you or pick your brain, anything like that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I can simply be reached. It's pretty simple. Scott@scottbeegan.com. Scott@scottbeegan.com.
Awesome.
And
all right.
I'll get them right to the desk.
Great. We'll include that in the show notes as well. So everybody, thank you for listening. Scott, again, this has been a real pleasure. I appreciate all your wisdom that you've shared with our listeners. I think there's some great key takeaways from this. And till next time, everybody, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiter of Steel podcast. If you enjoyed our finished product, please subscribe and leave a rating. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.